I knew there was something in my closet, something really evil, but I also knew I was dreaming, and I should face my fear. I tried to look directly at the closet door, but if I moved my eyes, my head would turn away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't look directly at it. And then I woke up in a cold sweat. At first, I felt really relieved that it was over, but very shortly, I realized it wasn't a dream, and there really was something in that closet. I was laying on my back and couldn't move, and I didn't really hear it, but I could kind of feel this sickening laughter wash over me, in and through me in waves, emanating from the closet. All of a sudden, the thing throws a human head at me, and it lands on my chest face up. It was this girl I knew in high school. Up to this point, I was kind of holding it together, terrified, but not panicked. Well, I lose it now, and I can't even scream. All I can do is make these grunting sounds, these moaning sounds. I'm wriggling and straining, trying to rock from side to side to get it off me, but I can't move. This seemed to last maybe a minute or two, and then I really woke up. It was so traumatic that for weeks I would be scared when I woke up that I wasn't awake and something horrible could happen at any second. It still makes my skin crawl when I think about that laugh. The thing is, I had never heard of sleep paralysis or night terrors at that point in my life. I thought I was losing my mind. Mine never came with visual hallucinations. I had the first one when I was 19. I was sleeping in the living room on a mat, young, broke, no bed. And suddenly, I felt a hand on my throat and one on my abdomen, pulling my soul through the floor. Unlike many of these stories, I did not think I was awake. I knew I was asleep. Usually, when I was having a bad dream, I could tell myself to wake up, but not this time. I tried to move, knowing that this would wake me up. I couldn't. I could open my eyes. I even saw my roommate's boyfriend come out to the kitchen for water. I couldn't wake up. Finally, I managed to push myself up with one arm and wake up. But I could still feel the hands, grasping, warm. I was so tired, all I wanted to do was sleep. But every time I would start to go back to sleep, those hands would be pulling my soul back out of my body. I finally got up and went into the roommate's room and began watching TV with her and the boyfriend. Even in the room talking to her, I could still feel the hands on my throat and my abdomen. Eventually, they wanted to sleep, so I went back out to sleep in the living room. But the hands were still there, still waiting to drag me down, and I was still so tired. Finally, I decided to try sleeping on my side, and it worked. Sort of. The hands were still there, grappling, trying to pull me down, but they weren't able to get a grip. I slept. The next was about a year later, then every 6 months. But they were not as bad as the first one. I would wake up, and they'd be gone. Then I got pregnant, and they began to come more frequently. Always the same. Always a hand coming and grabbing my throat and pulling me down. I was never choking. My soul was always just being pulled down through the bed to hell. Interesting, though. When I was in the hospital, while they still came, they no longer came at me from under the bed. Instead, I'd feel a hand reach from the bottom of the bed, feel its warmth as it grasped my ankle and tried to pull my soul out that way, while my soul fought to stay in my body. By the time I had my baby, and went home. They were nightly, and I was exhausted. But every night they'd come again. I reasoned it was just a dream, and it couldn't hurt me. And one night when it came, I just thought, whatever, do what you're going to do and just get it over with. Still telling myself it was a dream. I knew as soon as the thought formed that I most definitely did not mean it, but it was too late. The dream changed. There was still no visual, but it was like I was in this maelstrom of wind blowing me from all directions. But it wasn't wind. It was hands. Grasping. Grabbing. I tried to break free. I tried to wake up. I couldn't. Then came a thought. Let us have your baby, and we'll leave you alone. You can always get help for him later. That was enough. Now I was mad. So I called out, God, get them out of here. And they were gone. The weirdest part? They never came back. When I was little, I remember countless nights where I would lay in my bed, completely motionless against my will. Sometimes, there would be a shadow figure in the corner, crouched down, just watching me with invisible eyes. Not knowing what it was, naturally, I was terrified. I would try to yell for my mom, but no sound would come from my mouth. Sometimes the figure would move closer to the bed. If it got too close, I would usually will my voice into existence out of pure, unadulterated, terror-fueled adrenaline and yell for my mom. As an adult, several beings, shadowy, thin human forms, began moving rapidly in and out of my bedroom, circling the bed. Sometimes I could hear them whisper incoherent words in my ear. One night, fairly recently, I was on the cusp of sleep, and for whatever reason, my eyes shot wide open. Standing above my bed was a pale woman with curly red hair and no eyes. The moment my eyelids flung open, she put her face right in front of mine. The whole interaction lasted for maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I blinked, and she was gone. Sometimes I would wake up to the sound of blood-curdling screams. The next morning, I would ask the other people in the house if they heard the screams in the middle of the night, but no one ever acknowledged hearing them. The only time I could get a decent night's sleep in my late teens, early to mid-20s, was to get hammered drunk, as that seemed to quell the night terrors. It was always a treat to have a new boyfriend sleep over and wake up to his horrified face looking at me because I had just sat up in the bed and started screaming like I was getting stabbed. I'm 30 now, and after reading up about sleep paralysis and possible triggers for it, it doesn't happen too terribly often. For me, the intense periods of stress set them off, so I try to keep things as simple and chill as possible. When it does happen, it doesn't scare me like it used to, because I know what it is. It's not ghosts, it's not evil shit, it's not anything supernatural. It's just my stupid brain. Legitimately, the scariest experience of my life. I had recently returned from a trip to Turkey, and heard many calls to prayer from mosques while traveling. Though not Baha'i, through someone I met on the road, I also visited a site sacred to the Baha'i religion. Second night back, in the house alone, I had my first ever experience of sleep paralysis. There is a window slightly elevated and adjacent to the headboard of my bed. Through that window, I saw an intense light beaming down towards me, as if it were divine. It was beautiful, bright, and intense. And I heard an auditory summon, like a Muslim prayer call, but not quite specifically that loud or vivid. Though this was never said, I felt a deep and visceral, overwhelming sense that this was a divine being that wanted me to heed to its demands. to believe in the kind of omnipotent divine God that this seemed to be. I was spiritual then, but an atheist. Specifically, I felt like it wanted me to at least go to a house of monotheistic worship, example, church, mosque, etc. It was as if it were an apparition from God, but a very threatening one. There was an eerie sensation of believe in this shit or else. In my mind, I actively resisted this sort of existential pull with every essence of my being, though I felt like there was also a separate being in my room watching this happen. But I was strong-willed enough to resist it, the it being that it felt like I was being pulled out of my window by this bright light and had to actively fight to avoid that from happening. When the episode ended, I lay in my bed in somewhat of a state of disbelief that this had happened, deeply shaken and unsure of whether the fragility of my own mind or the presence of a divine being were more comforting explanations. No sleep the rest of the night, needless to say. The next day, weird things happened. To try to relax after all this, I took a hot bath with Epsom salts. The bathtub drain went down, but it didn't go back up when I wanted it to. Instead, after me trying for a solid 30 minutes to get the bath drain to open, it voluntarily drained itself in about 3 hours. No one else was even in the house. While I was driving back and dark clouds brewed overhead, the convertible's roof suddenly stopped working, leaving the top down as a thunderstorm loomed overhead. I had to drive into an auto shop off the road to save the car's interior. I am a skeptical man, so I thought this was likely just a series of weird coincidences, perhaps with the sleep paralysis being jet lag related. The next few nights, I only slept with a lamp on. Still, 2 of the next 4 or so nights, I had very similar experiences of sleep paralysis. Bright lights through the same window, and a foreboding sense of believe in me or bad things will happen to you. This even happened once during an afternoon nap that derived from my lack of sleep owing to this anxiety/lamp use. However, being a scientific man, I knew techniques to end these episodes because I had researched them. Mainly, to wiggle your toes to gradually restore the kind of bodily awareness that will eventually lead to the end of your paralysis. I felt the same overwhelming and intense sensation of being pulled begin, but I defeated them in probably 5 to 10 seconds by starting to wiggle my toes and then restore sensation to my body and end the episode. Which is a weird feeling in its own right, because you're lying in the exact same position as you were during the hallucination, only with your paralysis and hallucination gone. I have gone to church several times this year.